Hi, my name is Amy Muirs, and I want to tell you a little bit about the movie I watched called North Country, starring Charlize Theron. I always have trouble with her name. The movie was based on the character Josie Ames. She was a woman who left an abusive husband and returned to her parents' home in northern Minnesota to start over with her two children. She gets a job at Pearson's Mining Company where her father and her best friend work, and the movie takes place in 1989. And what's important about that is that during those opening scenes, we learn that at that time, men outnumbered women in the mining industry 30 to 1. And that I did some additional research, and the three top mining companies had signed an agreement that 20% of their workforce would be made up of women and minorities. And so this movie is really looking at the mining companies having to make that a reality. And so Josie and the other female workers are constantly harassed in the workplace. Everything from sexual harassment and threats against their persons to horrible jokes and innuendos, and I mean, every day they're bombarded with things that no person should have to put up with in the workforce. They also, I mean, they didn't even have bathrooms for the women because it was an all-men facility, and they didn't see why they had to provide women with anything special, like a women's only bathroom or porta-johns out where they were working in the mines themselves. And one other thing was that in this, they showed that the women had to go through a full physical examination prior to being hired to prove that they weren't pregnant. Otherwise, if they were, they wouldn't be hired. So a lot of the plot of the movie focuses on the treatment and all of the things that you definitely would just shake your head at today, that you wouldn't be able to believe that those things happen. So the movie really focuses on Josie, and as she just says, you know, enough, this isn't right. And as she becomes more vocal about standing up against the things that are happening, she and the other women suffer retaliation, increased harassment. It becomes physical, life-threatening, and she ends up, she takes it to the owner of the company. He basically says, you're done, you know, either, you know, concentrate on your work and stop, you know, trying to provoke the women, or, you know, we'll take your resignation. And so she ends up taking her battle to court. And many of the women, actually all of the other women in the movie, are just too scared to stand with her. They're afraid of what will happen if they lose the case, and they're also afraid of losing their jobs. It's the best money that they've made, and they're afraid, like I said, they're afraid of the additional harassment, and they're afraid that they won't be able to provide for their families. So the case really, the trial focuses on how Josie is treated throughout the trial as well. So her sexual history is called into question, her moral character, her integrity. She's nearly destroyed on the witness stand after she has to basically bear out, you know, show her entire personal history, including how her son was born. So part of the story is that she is raped, and that her son is the product of that, and she never wanted him to find out, and so that all comes to light as part of this story. And because of her courage on the stand, and the proof that she actually was raped, because of course they said that she wasn't, that she was promiscuous and all this, but at the end she needed 3 people to stand up with her to have a class action suit, and she got more than 3 at the end of the movie. So like basically all of the women stood up and said, we're in, and even some of the men who had witnessed the harassment stood up and said, enough is enough. So at the end, Josie and the women employees of Pearson win the lawsuit. It's a modest settlement, but most importantly, they get a sexual harassment policy. I think one of the greatest lessons I learned from this movie is that it takes someone of strong moral courage to stand up and say enough. You have to be resolute and willing to endure attacks against your character and even your person. And I would also say that just because a law is enacted, it doesn't mean that businesses are ready or willing to comply, and it can take a class action suit to make them change their ways. After viewing the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's website, I really determined that North Country focused on that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which focuses on the sexual harassment as a form of discrimination. So Josie fought the harassment through the class action lawsuit, and it was actually the first filed in the United States. So the entire movie was based in reality. And the judge had said that he would consider the class action suit if she was able to have 3 other plaintiffs stand with her. And like I said, it took almost the entire length of the trial before she had anyone standing with her. After watching the movie, I read more about the story on the National Women's History Museum website, and the actual case took 13 years to come to conclusion, and all the women who were part of the class action suit were treated as horribly as the character Josie in the film, not only by the employer but by the lawyers of the company. This case helped set the precedent on how plaintiffs would be treated by courts moving forward and who had the burden of proof. So I'm really hoping as takeaways for this class to really have a general understanding of how employment laws affect the running of small businesses. I'd also like to learn more about what resources there are to help employers stay on top of changing employment landscapes. And really, I hope that this class enhances my ability to respond to employees' concerns before they become something that could be a lawsuit. I really enjoyed this movie. I didn't think that I would. So I would encourage everyone to take time to watch it. It's not only informative but inspirational. And like I say, it inspired me to dig into and to learn more about the actual case of the women miners in northern Minnesota. Living in Minnesota, I was actually very sad that this was one of the first times I had heard about this. To me, these are the things we should be learning in history class, that they're part of who we are as a society. So again, I encourage everyone to take the time to watch this. Thank you.